Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We're going to talk about eduroam. This webinar is going to be hosted by ZIMREN in collaboration with UbuntuNet. My name is Luca Chapeyama, and our co-host is Mr. Revelation Nyirongo. He's an eduroam expert, and is the one who's going to be in charge of this webinar.
Thank you very much once again for having me here. I believe this is a very important time for us to meet and discuss eduroam in Zimbabwe and just clear out some concerns that stakeholders might have in this. Before we begin, I would like to share my screen, if you may, so that we get started. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, can see it now.
Great, finally. Thank you very much. And thank you, Harold, for filling in. So we are 9 minutes into our meeting, and I believe we can conclude this within an hour. But what I would like to encourage you to do is to basically stop me whenever you want something clarified or you would like to ask a question, so that we can regulate how many questions that we have. Or you can just type them in the chat box if it's not as pressing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about UbuntuNet Alliance and then introduce eduroam itself and its benefits and address common concerns and provide a technical overview. And then by the end of it, we will have a quick discussion and question and answer, if you may. Before I do that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Revelation, and I'm a DevOps engineer at UbuntuNet Alliance for Research and Education Networking for East and Southern Africa. And I hold a bachelor's in mathematical sciences with a major in mathematics and computing. I also do hold an MBA rather in IT project management, and I have AWS certifications. I do enjoy working with technology for people, really. That excites me, and I am glad to be part of the Alliance, supporting initiatives in East and Southern Africa. And basically, the Alliance for Research and Education Networking for East and Southern Africa focuses on creating a vibrant, connected, and sustainable community for research and education networks in East and Southern Africa. And so the vision of the Alliance is to develop and grow a thriving, sustainable community of NRENs and partners within East and Southern Africa, enabling and strengthening collaboration and innovation among research and education communities. And so NRENs, perhaps the term NREN might be new to some, or it might not, but basically it means National Research and Education Network. So in case of Zimbabwe, we do have an NREN by the name of ZIMREN, and which most of you or some of you are already part of. And so the goal and the vision of the Alliance is to basically facilitate and help develop and grow a thriving, sustainable community of these NRENs and the partners within East and Southern Africa. And we do that through various means. So first, one of the core services that we do provide as the Alliance is the provision of the core service itself, that is connectivity. So we do provide we do have points of presence in various countries in East and Southern Africa From there, the NRNs take over to run their national backbone. And the Alliance also offers a regional research and education connectivity, global transit deliveries in Africa or Europe. And one of the services is eduroam. Before I go to eduroam, there are a number of other services that the Alliance offers, including the open science tools and softwares that the Alliance offers. For instance, the Alliance runs what is known as Africa Archive, a platform where researchers in East and Southern Africa, basically the whole Africa, can share research output for free and get free DOIs assigned to them. And we do also provide Sectigo SSL certificates. Sectigo is a trusted CA that is popular among research and education institutions. We do provide also managed IDP services delivered in two models, hosted as a hosted platform as well as an on-premise platform, where we do provide like direct engineering support and setup and providing updates to ensure like effective and optimal use of the resource itself. And we do also provide and coordinate capacity building events or sessions or programs, talk of trainings, direct engineering assistance, and what have you. Previously we had an identity management training that we had in Ethiopia, and some of you might have attended that one in person. And we do have also online trainings that we do conduct. Also, we do offer cloud services that includes backup services, web hosting, and many others. And we do provide collaboration platforms like Wiki, Rocket Chat, discussion platform, real-time collaboration, and services and tools that would help institutions to run trainings, either network trainings. We do provide test environments that we can set up for institutions that would like to provide training to students or any group of audience. So not just test environments, but we do also provide like a cluster of virtual machines that students can quickly use to conduct any trainings. And we do also provide data management services, and also do provide operational services like monitoring and alerting infrastructure, service desk software, wiki for documentation, and what have you. That's just a tip of the iceberg, if you may, of the services that the Alliance offers. However, all these services that I've mentioned are offered by the host NREN, in this case ZIMREN. So ZIMREN is also able to offer these services. How does the Alliance come in? The Alliance would only chip in whenever ZIMREN is unable to or would like to get support from the Alliance. So if you'd like to avail any of these services, first talk to your NREN, ZIMREN, to find out how you can benefit from any of these services. Having said that, I would like to ask what, if any of you would like to describe what eduroam is, or have you ever used eduroam? Have you ever heard of eduroam? Anyone can come off mute and just tell us if they have used eduroam. Okay, so it doesn't seem like anyone has used eduroam before. That is just fine. So eduroam is a Wi-Fi service, a global Wi-Fi service that is specially meant for academic community all over the world, and it is based on 8 2.1x architecture, which is basically a service that would enable users to securely access network services at any participating institution using their home credentials. And it is currently available in 18 African countries and the rest of the world, really, pretty much. Just now, this year, we have a target to onboard more African countries, especially in our region, in the Ubuntu Alliance region. And just a quick view of the statistics. So my work has been mainly involved in deploying eduroam in various countries like Malawi, where we helped to host the NRO. NRO is a short form of National Roaming Operator, and we did that for Malawi and Turnet of Tanzania for a while until they were able to get their own infrastructure up and running, and then had to run the service on their own. Okay, and then again, if you have any questions or would like to jump in, provide a comment or anything or feedback, please do let me know, or you can just raise your hand or type it in the chat. Thank you very much. And Mr. Luca, if you can help me to scan through the chat if there's anything that requires my attention, I would appreciate that. And so we have deployed eduroam in a number of countries, and we have hosted some infrastructure for a number of countries until they were able to get on their own and host these services. You'll be interested to know that currently we are implementing eduroam in about 5 countries, each at a different level of growth, of implementation rather. So we are implementing eduroam in Botswana. That is almost, I would quantify it at 71% thereabout. 71 being 29 left out basically for the other activities that are supposed to happen, just to tie some loose ends, including signing the eduroam policy. I'll get to that later in the presentation, and getting institutions enrolled. And in Rwanda is where we had deployed eduroam, Rwanda and Burundi. And they are both tied at, I would say, 95% thereabout, because most of their infrastructure is up and just running with a few administrative activities remaining to happen. And we do have currently Namibia, which is functional and running. However, the case of Namibia is a little tricky because it's not necessarily an independent eduroam. It's currently riding on Tenet. Tenet is the NREN in South Africa and is the NRO of eduroam, and therefore providing NRO services to Namibia itself. So I'll talk more about what an NRO is in my upcoming slides. And so what we are only waiting for Namibia to do is to register an NREN, and then we provide the necessary support for it to fully establish its own NRO. And now we come to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe would be paged at around 53% thereabout for the work that we've done recently with Mr. Luca, Mr. Kasirori, and Mrs. Kangambeu from Buse University, and many other good people that we had a wonderful time setting up the infrastructure back when I was in Zimbabwe. And so Paging at 53% is where Zimbabwe is currently at. And basically, the question would be, how do we move from 53% and cover the whole 47%? The ZIMREN in Zimbabwe has covered a lot of ground to ensure that eduroam is deployed in Zimbabwe, and it can only do as much. What remains, there's a part that you as institutions have to play, and we're going to see how you get involved and your participation in eduroam would push eduroam implementation in Zimbabwe. Just a quick overview. Currently, these are the nations that are running eduroam in Africa, and you can see that there is no Zimbabwe listed here, and the goal is to have Zimbabwe listed here before all the other nations that have been I just talked about here. Okay, and you can see here that these are the number of service locations that are available in Africa. In Ghana, there are 83, and in Nigeria, there are 50, and in South Africa, there are 372 locations. In Trinidad, there are 5 locations. In Uganda, Renew, there are 41. So Zambia, there are a couple of them, but just that we haven't gotten data from the service endpoint that queries for number of service locations, and that is to be provided by the national roaming operator. And I would like you to appreciate what is happening in Europe as well, where we have Croatia at 1,094, and all these numbers in Germany, 2,925, almost the whole of Europe has many service locations. And these service locations do not only cover research and education institutions, they go beyond that to cover even the metro areas and talk of public spaces like airports and what have you. And so if you have a researcher from Serbia, for instance, coming through to Zimbabwe, if they have eduroam at the institution, they would come to Zimbabwe expecting to seamlessly connect. Immediately they arrive at the airport, or immediately they arrive at your institution and continue to do their work without necessarily asking someone, hey, what's the password to the Wi-Fi? Or how do I get the Wi-Fi here? And what have you. And also there are some events that are going to take place, exchange events within the research and education community that would require visitors from one institution to go to the other institution, and therefore the issues of network security or network access, administrative issues, they are sort of avoided in that case. So that leads us to the benefits of eduroam itself. So for users, is seamless connectivity. A student or a researcher doesn't have to go around trying to request for access to the network and then trying to ask around what's the username or what's the password and what have you, which would be a little unsecure, if you may, and provides for unnecessary administrative overheads. And eduroam provides secure Wi-Fi connectivity with other visiting institutions, and there's no need for guest accounts that everyone would be able to access that do not use 802.1x type of authentication, where each and every user is authenticated as an individual, unlike one password that would allow anyone with the password to gain access to your network. And there is consistent experience. Like, for instance, a researcher at University of Malawi who has access to eduroam can literally travel all over the world in most locations and connect seamlessly without any trouble. Okay, so there are some instances where a researcher would be at an airport. They are waiting for a connecting flight, and boom, there is eduroam. They can connect and run with it. Unlike if they didn't have eduroam, they would have to connect to a public Wi-Fi, which sometimes, and most of the times, it's unsecure because you don't know who is on the network, or you don't know the owner of the network and what their intention is, and you don't know who is listening to your traffic that you're trying to consume, which is a risk to to the security of the information that you have as a student or a researcher. For institutions, this reduces administrative overheads, like I mentioned, managing guest access, and it provides you with an enhanced collaboration opportunity. Like I mentioned, if you are hosting a research and education conference or meeting, it is very seamless for you to just provide eduroam and let everyone in your community enjoy, connect, without necessarily having to provide for managing all that guest access. And eduroam is a membership in a global research and education community, and therefore for any institution that considers itself to be forward-looking, they would want to participate in this global community itself by ensuring that they are providing this service. And there are many other benefits that I wouldn't have much time to talk about. However, let me just quickly jump into some common concerns that we've had people raise from various interactions that we've had. One is the security concern, and this is one of the major concerns that we've recently received from all the almost 4 countries that we are currently deploying eduroam in. And what you might be willing to know is that eduroam utilizes industry standard encrypted protocols. I'll just show you in a bit how these protocols run. And eduroam runs in a federated trust model with strict security requirements for all participants. So, like I mentioned, there is what is called an NRO, a national roaming operator, that is required to comply with all data protection regulations and requirements for it to become to be approved as an eduroam NRO. And an eduroam NRO is mostly an NREN, a national research and education network in the nation, which in this case is ZIMREN. And so what we have done currently is to provide for a request to the eduroam governance committee to approve of ZIMREN to become the eduroam roaming operator for Zimbabwe. And for this to happen, there has to be campus networks that are connected to eduroam, and there are some other steps that ZIMREN has to take in order to be certified as an NRO. And we do have some concerns around infrastructure, interoperability, and support. So in terms of infrastructure, we have many people thinking that it's quite expensive to run eduroam. They think the service is of high value. Sorry, is expensive to run. However, I want to break it to you that you can literally integrate eduroam with your existing network infrastructure and network equipment, such that you might not need actually to like to invest like a lot of resources like funds or anything. And it is highly interoperable with common authentication systems like Active Directory, LDAP, and what have you. And then there is a wide documentation, a well-written documentation and community support for implementation, and even goes further to provide you with an opportunity to to participate in the community and also provide your contributions towards the growth of the eduroam. We have seen in most UbuntuNet Connect conferences, a conference that runs each and every year, run by the UbuntuNet Alliance, which brings together all the research research and education minds within East and Southern Africa and all over the world. This last year it took place in Tanzania, and this year, as most of you might have heard of the communication, it is going to take place in Zimbabwe. And so you don't want to miss this opportunity to like contribute to the community, write a research paper on this, and provide your expertise on this, and basically just participate in the community itself. Speaking of which, I would like to introduce my colleague from UbuntuNet Alliance. I should have done this earlier. My apologies for that. Harold Boer. Harold Boer is a name that you're going to hear most frequently this year. As I just mentioned, the conference is going to be in Zimbabwe this year, and so you might be getting a lot of communication from Harold. Harold, would you like to say hello to the group?
Yeah, thank you so much, Revelation. Yeah, like Revelation said, the conference is coming to Zimbabwe and it offers a great opportunity for discussions such as the eduroam discussion, which I'm sure will be a sub-theme. And seeing as to how this year is going to be a lot of progress for ZIMREN and the entire ZIMREN community of universities in terms of adoption of eduroam, I think it does offer a great opportunity to maybe have an opportunity to learn, have an opportunity to share some experiences and some lessons as well. Yeah, thank you so much, Revelation.
Great, thanks, Harold. And now I just want to talk about the technical overview of eduroam in two parts. That is eduroam architecture and the radius communication flow. So, eduroam relies on a hierarchy of radius technology, radius servers. And so, yeah. So what you can see right now is the eduroam hierarchy of communication, where we have right here the user or a student who is trying to access using their laptop or their phone the network of their institution or a visiting institution, a visited institution rather. And so what happens is that this user makes a request to the infrastructure, network infrastructure, and that network infrastructure would push that request over to the radius server of that institution. The radius server for the institution would have to check the authentication details against its database, and then if it's not available in the database, it would have to proxy the request to a higher radius server, which is the National Federation Level Radius Server, the FLR, which currently is already in place, and it is run by the national roaming operator in the name of ZIMREN. Yeah, so this National Federation Level Radius also acts to provide two major activities or major goals. One is to provide proxying of requests within the nation itself, within the country. So the ZIMREN FLR would provide proxy service for institutions in Zimbabwe, and then it would also provide proxy requests that are not that are meant for other outbound radius servers. That includes radius servers that are on top, the top level radius servers, that is the regional proxy server run by the Ubuntu Net Alliance, and one redundant server in Wakren, West African partner that we have. After that, the requests are routed to European top-level radius servers, which are run by Giant, and there it goes out to the world. So if this was an institution in Philadelphia, United States, a user would log in into this institution, would provide the credentials in this institution, and then in an encrypted manner, we'll look at that in the next slide, would be passed on to the federation level radius at the institution in Philadelphia, and that would go all the way to the national radius server, federation level radius, typically run by Internet 2 in the case of the United States. That would be referred to the European top level radius, and then to the Ubuntu Net Alliance server, and then it would check with the NLAN that is running that federation level, and then the radius server for the institution, and then the radius server would have to check in the database that is providing authentication details for the network, and provide the response thereof after checking with the database itself. So this is a radius communication flow. Most of you might already be aware of this, or some of you might not. So I'll quickly just reiterate what I just mentioned earlier. So you have the supplicant here. So radius is a protocol that uses client and server model, and you have a supplicant here, which is a user, a phone, or anyone, and then you have the authenticator here, which could be your router switch or anything along those lines. So what your supplicant would do is to provide username and password in terms of eduroam now, username and password, which is basically protected by EAP-OL, EAP standing for Extensive Authentication Protocol, for some that might not be aware of that, and this is over local area network. So it creates that tunnel and then provides the username and passwords to the authenticator. This means that the username and password is not visible to the is not in plain text rather, and not visible to the not stored rather on the guest or the visited institution infrastructure. And so this authentication request is passed on to the authenticator itself, the switch as I mentioned, and the switch would pass on to the radius server of that organization, and that radius server would have to provide authentication by looking up in its list of users. That could be a database like I mentioned, Postgres, LDAP, or Active Directory. And this communication is done through what is known as a protected EAP, or some use MS CHAP version 2. So for those that use these authentication models, basically what that means is that the communication is done through a tunnel. First, a tunnel is created, and then a username or password is encrypted by what is known as a secret. So from the supplicant to the authenticator, there's each device on the network has a secret that is assigned to it, and therefore that secret encrypts the Wi-Fi username and password, and then uh, it is also hashed by perhaps MD5 hashing algorithm, and then sent through that particular tunnel. So you can see there that it's very secure, such that authentication is done on the visitor's institutional infrastructure, institutional server rather, unlike providing username and password to the institution for you to gain access. So this is done in the hierarchy that I had mentioned earlier, and if this is so we do expect three responses from the server. That is an accept, an access accept response, an access rejected response, and an access challenge request response rather, that some protocols may use. And the use of a secret for this infrastructure is very important, as if a device on the network is trying to spoof or send information disguising as someone who has to be on the network, the Radius server would check their secret against what it is stored in the Radius configuration and check if they match. If they do not match, the Radius server will basically just drop or ignore that request. While if they do match, the Radius server would take the next step to authorize access, or to reject access to the resource that is trying to be accessed. And so you can see that that's very, very secure. I see we have 6 minutes to the time, so I'll just brush through this and then take any questions if you do have. So if you want to implement eduroam, so you can do it in 3 steps. First, you need to set up a Radius server that should be connected to your institutional identities server or identity management that you do have. Some do have Postgres, some do have Microsoft AD, LDAP, and even some do have, some do have plain Excel, or they do have manually configured users into their identity provider. And so your institution needs to have a Radius server in the first place that will be connected to the Zimbabwe Federation level Radius. So this institution, for instance, let's take Chinoi University or Lupani University. Lupani would require a Radius server, and that Radius server will be connected to the existing Federation level Radius provided by ZIMREN. And ZIMREN will take care of the rest. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to do. Some of you might already have the Radius server and might be implementing Microsoft AD, which we can explore ways on how you can integrate that with ZIMREN's Federation level Radius. And secondly, you need to connect your access points to your Radius server. So some do provide for network segmentation, where they segment their network to only have like a portion of their bandwidth, their traffic, a portion of their traffic, dedicated for eduroam, and then separate a portion of their traffic as well for other SSIDs. And so when you connect your network, depending on however the architecture you have, to your radius, then you federate your radius server with the rest of the world. That is through the NRO that we had described earlier, and that is ZIMREN itself. Reaching that far, I would like to say Maita Nyehu. Let's keep in touch. My name is Revelation. Like I mentioned, you can contact me using that QR code, or send me an email at devops@ubuntunet.net. Right now, I'll take any questions if you have. While we are waiting for the questions, I would like to show you this resource page. Thank you very much.